everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com and it's time to talk about Elimination Chamber. That's right, strap in, put a nice CD in the car radio and get some friends involved because we're speeding down the road to WrestleMania. But in all seriousness, this at first seemed like a bit of an underwhelming card because of course Brock Lesnar is the WWE Champion and Goldberg is the Universal Champion and they're not going to show up to Elimination Chamber, so there were no world title matches in the men's or the women's division either, but of course the night was main evented by that big women's Elimination Chamber match to decide who would go on to face Becky Lynch at WrestleMania. And I think it's fair to say that even though it had a bit of a weird look to the card beforehand, this was a very eventful show indeed. So, without any further ado, let's take a look at what happened at Elimination Chamber 2020. First of all, the pre-show match, which only lasted a few minutes really, it was the Viking Raiders picking up the pretty easy victory over Zack, Ryder and Curt Hawkins. I thought the boys were going to win. I didn't. Nobody thought they were going to win. But now let's talk about the main card, and we started things off with a very interesting matchup, one of the more intriguing ones heading into this event in my opinion. Daniel Bryan taking on Drew Gulak, with the whole build being that Drew knows Bryan's weaknesses and knows how to exploit them. And we start things off with lovely amateur wrestling, and the crowd are the crowd are obviously partly behind Daniel Bryan because everybody loves Daniel Bryan all of the time, but Gulak is a Pennsylvania boy and this Philadelphia crowd were pretty behind him too. It made for a very interesting atmosphere to kick off the night. And yeah, they started off really wrestling around on the mat, a lot of horseplay, a lot of rough and tumble, and interestingly, just as he'd predicted, Gulak seemed to have Bryan's number. And then when I thought the match would kind of go through the gears and become more of a traditional WWE style pay-per-view match, instead the amateur wrestling kind of just continued and continued. It wasn't boring though, it was really well done technical wrestling, and it was just bizarre to see this sort of match open a pay-per-view for WWE in 2020. But I quite like the change of pace. There were some unique spots here. At one point Bryan did the whole the old World of Sport spot where he's caught but he does a headstand to get out of the submission, but instead Gulak sat there and just lifts his body up and drops Bryan headfirst on the mat with kind of a tiny little mini pile driver kind of move. It was weird, but it was very inventive. Bryan also has all of our hearts in our mouths because he just sells really convincingly, and it's terrifying given his history with injuries and that sort of thing. At one point he sells a suplex by letting one arm go a bit floppy and then starting to feel his fingers to see if he's lost feeling in that. I mean, that's really scary, Daniel. Could you not do that, please, mate? But they flag it up on commentary, so you kind of know that Bryan is just selling. But then, moments later, we get probably the scariest moment of the entire night as Drew hoists him with a released German suplex and Bryan just lands straight on the back of his head, a terrifying spot and a really scary moment. Luckily, Bryan appears to be okay and they work towards the finish of the match. Gulak gets the Gulak locked in, but Bryan reverses into the yes lock and eventually Drew, well, he doesn't tap out, he passes out instead. And Bryan celebrates his win, but he really puts Drew over in his celebration because he looks really shocked and really startled that Gulak pushed him so close to the limit. So I think this match did wonders for Drew Gulak in a way, even though he didn't pick up the victory. It was a good match, but a really scary one as well, man. Whenever you watch Bryan take on somebody with a lot of suplexes in their arsenal, such as Brock Lesnar or indeed Drew Gulak, sometimes there's always the risk that this kind of thing can happen, and it was pretty scary. Next up, the US title match with the champion Andrade defending against Humberto Carrillo, and in Andrade's corner of course there was his manager Zelina Vega. The last match got off to a very deliberately slow start, but this one got off to a lightning fast one with Andrade charging out of the corner, back elbow, 1, 2, and Carrillo was able to kick out. It's pretty back and forth and really entertaining stuff. I enjoyed the contrast of styles between this match and the previous one, the last one being very amateur mat-based kind of wrestling and this one being far more lucha libre, far more athleticism. At one point, in fact, they both head up to the top rope and Carrillo hits an insane jumping Hurricane Rana after just bouncing on the top rope moments before. That's a really risky move, but it certainly paid off. A little bit later on, it looks like the champion is about to put Carrillo away with the big double knees in the corner, but Humberto is able to bravely kick out. What a handsome babyface man. Zelina Vega then shows a bit of a vindictive streak as she pulls up the mat on the outside. Of course, the DDT on the exposed concrete has been quite a theme of this feud. It kept Andrade out of action in terms of kayfabe for a month, so they flagged that up on commentary. Really nicely done. Andrade goes to give Humberto the DDT on the concrete, but Humberto backdrops him out, and it looks like Carrillo might actually win this thing. They get back in the ring, and there's quite a furious exchange of roll-ups and pinfall attempts and all that sort of stuff, but eventually it's Andrade who picks up the victory, rolling up Humberto Carrillo and grabbing the tights as well out of the view of the referee. What a sneaky man, but he is still your United States champion. Next up, the SmackDown Tag Team Elimination Chamber match, the first of 2 chamber matches tonight. This features Heavy Machinery, Rude and Ziggler, the champions Miz and Morrison, my boy Lince Dorado and his friend Gran Metalik as well, and the New Day and the Usos. The latter 2 teams start this match off. The Usos and the New Day have a really intense start to this match because, of course, it all harkens back to their big tag team rivalry, and it's the Lucha House Party who are the 3rd team in. And around this time, in the early stages of the match, it looked a bit sloppy at times. Kofi slipped off the ropes at one point. I think Gran Metalik made a bit of a similar mistake when they ended the match as well. And I was thinking, are these ropes a little bit loose or a little bit slippy or something? Thankfully, as the match went on, things got a lot better. The Lucha House Party head up to the top of one of the pods. Kofi Kingston echoes what he did last year when he cornered Daniel Bryan on top of the pod, jumping up from the turnbuckle to the top of the pod. He almost slips off, but thankfully he's alright. He gets knocked down though, and the Lucha House Party launch themselves in opposite directions off the pod, wiping out the Usos and the New Day on the floor below. The next team in are the champions Miz and Morrison. They dominate because they are the fresh men until Gran Metalik hits a huge Hurricane Rana from the top of the pod onto John Morrison. 1, 2, and Miz is on hand to prevent the champions from being eliminated. Next in are Heavy Machinery, Otis and Tucker, who run wild on everybody. Everybody that is, apart from my boy Lince, who has headed up to the top of the pod. And you can definitely, there were a lot of little mistakes in this show because there were individual microphones in each of the pods, so you could hear a lot of spots being called and that sort of thing. I'm sure Matthew will be having an absolute field day, but you could definitely see Otis and Tucker going, Lince, mate, Lince, yeah, that's good, start climbing now. They didn't say start climbing now, but they effectively said, we're about to do this spot, you better start climbing, mate. But climb to where? Well, we didn't see because the camera stayed off Lince for a while as all the teams brawled in the ring below, but he climbed up to the very ceiling of the chamber, hung for a second, and then somehow managed to swing himself into just a glorious shooting star press from the roof of the chamber down onto the pile of people below. An insane spot, and probably the single most impressive move of the night. Unfortunately, despite being the king of all of our hearts, Lince is let down by his teammate because Gran Metalik almost instantly falls victim to the trash compactor after this move, and they're eliminated from the match. Lince did nothing wrong. He deserves those tag team titles. In fact, let's give him a big old title shot on his own at WrestleMania. Not even the tag team titles. Let's put him up against Goldberg. Come on, Lince Mania. It's not going to happen. I really need to let this go. Ziggler and Rude are next in, and they team up with Miz and Morrison, a bit of an unofficial allegiance to try and stop the roll of Heavy Machinery. But Otis and Tucker continue to run wild because they're big, beefy boys. Dolph is scared of Otis. Obviously, they've had the whole back and forth feud regarding Mandy Rose and Valentine's Day and all that heartbreak. So Ziggler tries to escape from Otis by climbing to the top of the pod, but Tucker climbs up the other side of the pod and blindsides him. He throws Ziggler down, and Otis below catches him as he falls from the pod. It's very impressive. What a show of strength from the big man. Otis deals with Ziggler for a little bit, and Tucker is still on top of the pod. He looks down and just runs and launches himself into a glorious swanton bomb onto everybody else below. Tucker, you forget how agile he is for such a large man. I'm saying large and big men a lot in this match recap. That's because it did feature Heavy Machinery, 2 very large and big men. Otis charges at Dolph Ziggler, but Ziggler moves out of the way. Otis crashes into an empty pod and through the door at the back, which I believe was cunningly left open by the referees. And Otis just spills out of the chamber itself to the ringside area. Tucker is really worried about his partner as ringside officials and referees check on Otis outside of the chamber, but Tucker's concern quickly turns to rage, and he turns, oh my god, I'm really hamming it up here. It quickly turns to rage. He turns back, heads into the ring, and tries to take the fight to Ziggler and Rude, but the numbers game is too much, and eventually Tucker falls victim to a glorious DDT, and with that, Heavy Machinery are out of the match. But Ziggler and Rude don't last much longer in this match because the New Day and the Usos team up to take the heels out of contention. The Usos finishing the job with stereo splashes from the top of a pod each onto both men below. So we're left with the New New Day, the Usos, and the champions Miz and Morrison. And it looks for a second like the New Day and the Usos are going to strike up a bit of an allegiance to take out the heels and leave it with just those two at the end of the match. But instead, their old rivalry flares up again, and they just can't keep their hands off each other. Kofi heads back up to the top of a pod and misses a splash into the ring, crashes and burns, and Miz and Morrison sneak in to cover him and eliminate the New Day from the match. And it's down to Miz and Morrison and Jimmy and Jey Uso. And the two teams have a pretty good mini match at the end with some nice near falls here and there, but in the end it's the Miz and Morrison who win and retain their belts. Miz hitting a sunset flip, Morrison covering from the other side. Miz's feet are on the ropes for extra leverage, but it's fine because it's an Elimination Chamber match, and the referee is forced to count the pinfall. And even though it had a bit of a ropey start, I think this match impressed by the end. I would of course have liked to have seen Lince Dorado win, but apart from that, I thought maybe Ziggler and Rude could have won, thereby setting up a WrestleMania match against Otis and Tucker. Maybe we'll still get that match anyway, and it doesn't need to be for the tag belts, but who knows? I guess we'll find out in a few weeks' time. Next up, AJ Styles versus Alistair Black in a no DQ match. And a lot is made of this no DQ stipulation on commentary, as they're all, they're saying, oh, Gallows and Anderson can get involved whenever they want. How on earth is Alistair Black going to overcome the odds here? Yeah, if only he had a big undead zombie wizard friend to help him. But who knows? Who knows what will happen? Let's find out. AJ works the left leg of Alistair Black a lot in this match because that's his planned leg, his standing leg for the Black Mass. And also it's the leg that AJ targets with the calf crusher. So that's really good strategy there. Makes a lot of sense. He doesn't just go for it with standard wrestling moves either. At one point he grabs a kendo stick from under the ring and just starts to take out that left leg of Alistair Black. But Alistair Black bravely works his way back into the match, and Gallows and Anderson are like waiting for when the referee's back's turned to get involved. They're not just rushing Alistair Black. In fact, as our writer Justin Henry said on Twitter during this match, why are Gallows and Anderson not just lighting a pair of 2x4s and absolutely charging AJ's opponent? Very polite, very nice from the heels. AJ clamps on that calf crusher, but Alistair Black crawls across the ring, grabs the kendo stick and uses it to break the hold by just mashing it into AJ Styles' face. Classic face mashing from Alistair Black. Black goes for his springboard moonsault off the middle rope, but AJ Styles catches him in the tombstone position and even does the Undertaker's throat slit gesture, but Black rolls through and gets a near fall. A little bit later on, we head to the outside where Black is on top of the German announce table, leaps off and crushes AJ with a big Meteora, sending him through a table on the outside of the ring. Back in the ring, Black sets up for the Black Mass, and eventually Gallows and Anderson remember the rules of this match, or lack thereof. They get in the ring and just beat down Black. They hit him with the Magic Killer and they set him up for the phenomenal forearm. They hold him in place while AJ's on the apron, and it looks like all hope is lost for Alistair Black, and then we hear that gong and then the lights go down. It's Undertaker appearing out of nowhere. He was under the ring probably. He chokes out Gallows and Anderson. They roll out the ring because they're cowards. AJ comes off the top with a big springboard. Undertaker catches him. Big choke slam. The gong sounds again. The lights go down. And then he's gone. Off into the night. Like Batman or something. Alistair Black's pretty shaken by this. He's like, what the hell just happened there? But he's not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. He lifts up AJ Styles and wipes him out with an insane Black Mass. One of the best I can remember seeing. And that is enough for the pinfall victory. Right, so this was probably one of my least favourite moments on the show. Not because I don't like The Undertaker appearing, it's very exciting and all that, but I don't think I'd have done it in quite this way. Well, there are two issues really. One, the fact that Gallows and Anderson didn't get involved for the majority of the match, even though it was very clearly a no DQ stipulation. But secondly, it's another big loss for AJ on the road to WrestleMania. He lost in Saudi Arabia because The Undertaker just inserted himself into that gauntlet match, and he's lost now again because of The Undertaker. And I think if you're going to build up Styles as presumably a credible opponent for The Undertaker, I'm guessing we're going to get that match or some form of it, you don't want him to be losing too often. And at the minute, I don't think we can view Styles as being anywhere near Undertaker's level of kayfabe ability. Next up, the Raw Tag Team Championship match with Angelo Dawkins and Montez Ford, the Street Profits, defending their titles against Seth Rollins and Murphy. In every video, I almost say Buddy Murphy, and I really want to, but it's just Murphy. This match has a bit of a cool-down vibe about it after the big Elimination Chamber match, and of course the appearance of The Undertaker, but Credit to the Street Profits, they're really good at hyping up the crowd and getting them involved again. At one stage, Montez Ford hits a big dive onto both of his opponents on the outside of the ring. He rolls Buddy Murphy back in, but as he goes to get back into the ring to follow him, the AOP take advantage of Rollins distracting the referee. They drag Ford outside and beat him down. And then the Viking Raiders music hits, and hot off their big victory on the pre-show, here comes Eric and Ivar down to the ring. They brawl with the AOP to the back, and it's all even once again. The heels still have control, but when Murphy goes for a pedigree, Dawkins is able to maneuver out of it and survive. Then Ford gets tagged in, Rollins gets tagged in, and Ford actually hits the big frog splash on Rollins. Nearly. Rollins gets the knees up, rolls up Ford, but it's only a near fall. And then, just as it looks as though the heels are in control of this match and might actually win back those Raw Tag Team titles, here comes Kevin Owens sauntering down from the crowd like a slow motion John Moxley, and he's got a big bag of popcorn. He gets over the crowd barrier and just sits on the announce table, just eating a bit of popcorn. Rollins is obviously very distracted. He heads over, he goes, "What the hell are you doing here?" And Owens just launches a fistful of popcorn into his face. Wrestling's really fun. We do then get a legitimately very impressive moment as Rollins is totally fuming at Kevin Owens. He's about to attack him, and bam! Angelo Dawkins runs around the ring and crushes Seth Rollins into the crowd barrier. It's an awesome shot, and it turns the tide of the match. Murphy tries to save the day. He dives over the top rope, but the Street Profits catch him and launch him into the crowd barrier, and then back in the ring, he falls victim to the frog splash, and the Street Profits retain. Rollins is fuming in the ring afterwards. He's shouting at Murphy on the outside, saying, "What the hell happened to you?" Turns around, straight into a stunner from Kevin Owens, and everybody cheers because it's a stunner. I like to think that everybody cheers because it's Kevin Owens and I really like him, but it's also partly for the stunner, let's be honest. Next up, it's a 3-on-1 handicap match as the IC champion Braun Strowman defends against Sami Zayn, Cesaro, and Shinsuke Nakamura. Zayn cuts a promo before the heels' entrance where he says, "Look boys, I'm going to ask you right now, can you just stay on the apron in this match? Because I feel like I really want to take on Braun Strowman one-on-one, and I think I've got his number. I think I'm going to win. You might not even have to tag in at all for the duration of the match." And I'm thinking, what is Sami Zayn up to here? They get in the ring, the bell rings, and Zayn immediately tags out to Nakamura. He was playing little mind games, the cheeky devil. Strowman keeps going for Zayn throughout the opening stages of this match, but Zayn hops off the apron and backs away whenever Strowman comes near. So Strowman just turns around and continues to dominate Shinsuke Nakamura. Braun Strowman, I like Strowman, but he's no-selling Shinsuke Nakamura's offense, which just shows you, sadly, how far the former New Japan star has fallen in recent times. Anyway, Sami then starts to get a little bit more brave. He starts tagging in and out. He'll tag in, come in, hit a little jab or two, a little cheap shot, and then tag out once again. And it's deliberately infuriating heel stuff. Strowman eventually snaps and chases Sami Zayn around the ring. He barges Nakamura out of the way. He barges Cesaro out of the way. So Zayn dives under the ring and tries to hide under there. Strowman goes to follow him, and instead Nakamura and Cesaro cut him off and start to beat him down. Strowman ends up draped over the middle rope when the referee's not really paying attention, and Nakamura, one of the illegal men in the match at this stage, runs along the apron and nails a big Kinshasa, and Strowman is now dead to rights. Sami Zayn tags in, Cesaro and Nakamura hit the big vertical suplex Helluva Kick combo from Sami Zayn rushing in. Sami makes the cover, 1, 2, I'm like certain that Strowman's going to kick out, 3, Sami Zayn is the new IC champion. And even though, you know, fans of Sami Zayn for a while, or maybe his good friend El Generico on the indies, might not see this as ideal circumstances for Zayn to win the Intercontinental Championship, I think it sounds good, doesn't it? Sami Zayn, IC champion, it just sort of fits. In fairness, I am quite biased as a huge fan of Sami Zayn, but I think he really deserves this for all the work he's put in, both inside and outside of WWE. I think he's superb, and I really will enjoy seeing where he goes with this. He'll probably lose it at WrestleMania, but I guess we'll find out. It is his first title on the main roster. And finally, the main event of the night, the Women's Elimination Chamber match to determine who will face Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's title at WrestleMania. In this match are Shayna Baszler, who is like 100% going to win this thing, Ruby Riott, Liv Morgan, Sarah Logan, Natalya, and Asuka, with Ruby Riott and Natalya starting off the match. Natalya clamps an early sharpshooter onto Ruby Riott at one point, but Ruby rolls through and sends Natalya crashing into Liv Morgan's pod. Sarah Logan is the next woman to enter the match and just charges straight at Natalya. Big shotgun dropkick, and that sends Natty flying once again into the side of the pod. The same one, Liv Morgan's pod. That pod is taking an absolute battering in the early stages. Ruby is of course scared of her ex-stablemate Sarah Logan, so she runs away up the side of the pod, but Natalya drags her back down into a big sit-out powerbomb on the outside of the ring, and then Sarah Logan with a big crossbody from the top crashing onto both women below. It looks like Natalya caught a knee right in the face on that spot. Hopefully she's alright. Shayna Baszler, who is, remember, 100% going to win this thing, is the next woman in and immediately catches Sarah Logan in the Kirifuda clutch, and Logan taps out. Ruby Riot's the next victim. She gets slammed, kneed, and the clutch is again applied, and Ruby Riot taps out, and Shayna is on a terrifying roll. Natalya is next. Can she stand up to Shayna Baszler? No, she can't. Shayna Baszler is 100% winning this match. Shayna traps Natalya in the gap of an empty pod and just rams the door into her again and again. It looks vicious, and then she makes Natalya tap out again to the Kirifuda clutch. Now, this was a bit weird. I don't know if apparently submissions do count outside the ring in this sort of match, so I can't remember if we've seen that before or not, but I guess it counts now. Shayna's now on her own, waiting for either Asuka or Liv Morgan to enter the match, and I'm thinking, right, they're just going to send the next woman in straight away. No, they don't. They wait and burn time until eventually the time comes around that one of the women would have entered the match anyway. Why not just send them straight in there? There's no one there for Shayna to face. Maybe, I guess you could argue that she's earned the right to rest and recuperate after dominating, but it really ground the momentum of this thing to a halt. Liv Morgan's in next. She puts up a few seconds of resistance. She's all fired up, but Shayna, once she gets a hold of her, just deals with her in brutal fashion, swinging Liv Morgan right into the side of a pod hard, and it looks pretty brutal. She then drags Liv up to the top rope. She sits on the top turnbuckle, puts the clutch on, and lifts Liv into the air, and Liv Morgan, she doesn't tap out actually, she passes out, and it's down to Shayna and Asuka. And again, we have to wait for like 2 or 3 minutes for Asuka to enter the match, and Asuka spends the whole time just trash talking in Japanese. She really, I'm surprised she didn't get tired, the amount of talking she was doing. It was totally non-stop. Asuka is fired up, and she manages after a couple of moments to get the Asuka lock locked in on Shayna, but Shayna rolls out under the bottom rope, stands up, and backs Asuka hard into the chamber wall. Back in the ring, Shayna gets the clutch applied, but Asuka manages to fight out, so Shayna eliminates her in exactly the same way she eliminated Ruby Riott. Slam, knee, Kirifuda clutch, and that's it. Asuka's done for, and Shayna has indeed won the match in very straightforward fashion. This was a weird match. It was a weird one because WWE kind of found themselves in a bit of a lose-lose situation with the way they built it, I guess. They should have booked it like this. This was the right thing to do, to have Shayna dominate and progress to WrestleMania, but in doing so, they made for a pretty unentertaining main event of their show. It was a weird one, but it was kind of the right thing to do. So I can't really get my head around this, but I do have very mixed feelings. It seemed like a bit of a damp squib to end the night, because the thing that we all knew would happen did happen, and maybe happened in even more straightforward fashion than we could have possibly imagined. I mean, this match seemed to be over so quickly for a chamber match that I was honestly almost expecting Becky Lynch to come out and pull a big John Cena and say, right, screw Mania, we're doing this title match right here, right now, and then we get an extra match to end the show. But that didn't happen at all. Becky was watching on a monitor backstage in the middle of the match, but she didn't appear at all in the arena. So, yeah, Shayna just wins and steamrolls everybody to do so. And that's it. That's what happened at Elimination Chamber 2020. I said in the intro that it was an eventful show, and it was. You know, Undertaker appeared, we had 2 big chamber matches, Shayna is better than everybody in front of her, and Sami Zayn is the new IC champion. So, quite a lot of twists and turns on the road to WrestleMania, and I cannot wait for the big one, the showcase of the Immortals, the grandest stage of them all, and it's coming up in just a few weeks' time. So thanks very much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and I'll see you very, very soon.